Hello, mamas. Thank you so much for joining me. I was super pumped to be able to get this interview with best-selling author Lily Nichols. She has two awesome books that I know that you will truly appreciate. I know I did when I was pregnant, and they are Real Food for Pregnancy and Real Food for Gestational Diabetes. So I don't know about you, but when I was pregnant, I was reading labels, trying to figure out, what to eat, what not to eat, how much to eat, should I eat this, should I eat that? And it was time consuming, it was stressful. And so someone like Lily has gone and done a lot of research. So hopefully you don't have to do as much. So I love the fact that I'm able to introduce her to you, and I really hope you enjoy this interview. But first, I would like to read a little bit about her background so you can get to know her a little bit. So let's go. This is it here. It says, Lily is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and certified diabetes educator. Her work has included prenatal nutrition, public policy, consulting, research, that's for sure, writing, and clinical practice. All of these experiences have brought her to where she is today. She has an in-depth understanding of all sides of prenatal nutrition, including why conventional policy is what it is and where there's room for improvement, that's for sure. So her work is known for being evidence-based, that is backed by research, love that, and sensible. Yes, that's a fancy way of saying common sense. And that's actually what I really, really love about Lily Nichols, is that she really has married that just common sense and traditional wisdom from mothers and aunts and grandmothers, also with scientific findings. So she brings all of that together in such a beautiful way. And like I said, she has two best-selling books, The Real Food for Pregnancy and Real Food for Gestational Diabetes. And she has over 930 citations of her research. So that'll just tell you right there what good stuff this is. So, and the cool thing is that, she puts it in layman's terms. So people who are not very scientific can understand it. And that's, with our pregnancy and mama mushy brain, that's really helpful. So this is where she believes the magic happens, where science and traditional wisdom intersect. As you'll hear today, she was passionate about sharing her evidence-based prenatal nutrition information so mamas can have a smoother pregnancy and health professionals can have research to back up their real food recommendations. And that's a biggie, because I don't know if you know this, and kudos to doctors, OBGYNs, they're wonderful, we love them, but they only have about 20 hours of nutritional education, unless they, go out and seek to have more of that education. But you're kind of getting that base level information on nutrition. And so if you're really, really wanting a lot more information, someone like Lily Nichols or, an actual nutritionist, naturopath, or people that are in that field are going to be really, really helpful. So I'm very excited for you to listen to this interview, and I hope you get a lot out of it. Thanks so much, and take care.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know that you are a busy mom, and you have, is it an 8-month-old?
She's 9 months now. Yeah.
I figured it was kind of right around that. And a toddler. How old's your little guy?
He's 4 now.
Oh, that's a fun age. I like
that. More fun than 2 and 3. I guess fun in different ways, right?
Yeah. I know. I liked what you had said. I think it was in one of your posts about, every age, every stage just brings different challenges, right?
100%. Yep.
Totally. So yeah. And I think it was also, was it yesterday or the day before, you had done a post that I really, really appreciated, was about grateful and grieving.
Yes.
Yeah. And that just really hit home, I think, probably for so many of us. And, just the loss of the, socializing, the loss of community. And, I think for you and I know that, you're a working mom, and so am I. And so just being able to have that time to even just work and just alone time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think it's hard for people to understand. I think until you're in the throes of parenthood, that you really do need those, even if it's just a few hours. I mean,
yeah,
I work part-time. I intentionally don't work a full-time schedule. That's a choice. I have
made and worked towards for a long time.
Yeah.
But having the routine interrupted where, my son is no longer going to preschool and doesn't have that socialization going on is very tough. And then of course, I don't have childcare for my daughter. I only had 10 hours a week to get stuff done anyways. So now it's just all crammed into all the in-between hours. And, I guess in a way it's just a good experiment in learning to say no to more things and be more intentional with your time. But it is tough. I mean, we're just, parents everywhere are just not getting a break. So that's the grieving part. The grateful part is, I still have work that can be done. I have that flexibility in my schedule. I'm not a frontline healthcare worker. I mean, on and on and on and on and on. You can, I think it's, I think we need to sort of allow ourselves to have those two emotions hand in hand and not compare ourselves to, well, that person has it way better. That person has it way worse. Like, your feelings are valid, let it out. We're in this very strange time.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I think I've actually, and probably a lot of moms struggle with that, right? They think, oh, I'm so lucky, I'm not on the front lines and I'm able to do this. And, thank God that I even have children. There's some women who don't have children. And
absolutely.
So, then you feel bad for actually still having your wants and needs. And I think that that's a really slippery slope and kind of tricky,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The mom guilt, the endless mom guilt, right?
Yeah. And then, it's so funny because then I talk to not so much my mom, because it was a little bit different for me growing up. But, maybe other moms like, well, I had 4 kids and I was home with my kids all the time. And what are you talking about? Like, this is what I used to do all the time. I'm like,
I know.
Yeah, but even our grandparents, they pretty much sent you out in the morning and said, don't come back till dinner.
Exactly.
I'm like, I don't know if you really had to deal with that all the time.
Exactly. It's a different time. Parenting is a different time. And I think we also just need to own that, some people are better parents when they have more breaks or longer breaks from their kids. They feel very much fulfilled by their work. And there's other people who feel 100% very fulfilled being with their kids, pretty much around the clock. And it's okay that we all have different ways of making it work. It's just now everybody has been pushed into the, well, not everybody, but the people who aren't able to or aren't going out of the house to work right now have been pushed into this sort of in-between space that maybe that wouldn't have been their choice. I mean, we're certainly enjoying having more time with the kids. I'm grateful. Yeah. I mean, my husband is still considered an essential worker, but his schedule is slightly reduced. However, without a separate person for childcare and just the 2 parents managing the 2, it's my 9-month-old is still nursing. I mean, it's just chaos. It's just always chaos, So.
Yeah, that's why I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she agreed to even do an interview with me, because not only does she have a little one on her and another little one pulling on her, then you're a busy working mom. So it's so awesome. And I know
I'm glad we can make it work.
the audience definitely, and will just be super thrilled. So yeah. So for those of you who don't know, and Lily doesn't even know this, but she's kind of my best friend. No, I mean, I'm just kind of like that self-taught nutrition nerd. And with what I do with my work in Luvbelly, I'm constantly just trying to help women around the pre and postnatal nutrition that kind of navigate through that whole world. And I really rely heavily on experts such as yourself, who actually have done the deep work. So that's kind of where I'm at with it and how I discovered you and your books and stuff. So I'm excited to, share that with the community. And I don't know, I love how you just really kind of married the evidence-based research with traditional wisdom and then what I just call common sense. So I think that is something, as a mother, when I was pregnant the first time, like I said, I kind of had in my 20s, I had a lot of health issues, and that's what kind of led me down the path to learn more about health and nutrition, because I didn't want to be taking medications, and I didn't want to be doing all of that. And I wanted to handle it naturally. And the whole idea that, food is either medicine or poison. And so that's kind of where I got my start. But then just kind of down the line, I just, everything just kind of started coming together. And, I think that's something that kind of interests me with you, is that, what is it that kind of brought those worlds together for you? Because I know you started out as a dietitian, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And then, but then a lot of times people just go down this real kind of medical kind of angle with it, and, the whole food pyramid, but you really kind of branched out from that and started going in, more of a wider spectrum. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you kind of came to that idea of marrying that research and that science. Because I think your subtitle of your book kind of says it best, science and wisdom, and just wondering kind of how that came together for you.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. That's a very kind word. So I appreciate all of them. As far as, where I got my start, how I got into this, I was actually interested in nutrition from a pretty young age. My family was, interested in this stuff, and definitely had more of a whole foods kind of a mindset. I grew up mostly with home cooked meals, and we did like takeout and fast food and stuff like that too. It wasn't like super, super strict or anything, but there were certain things that my mom just wouldn't buy. We never had soda in the house. I've never liked soda because it was never something that was like, we had like hippie soda, like juice squeeze, which was like juice mixed with sparkling water. Do you remember that? Oh, I don't even know if they still make it anymore.
I remember Hanson's was like a soda that, like, I grew up partially in the Hawaiian Islands, and that was a really it was like an all natural soda. But
juice squeeze wasn't as sweet as Hanson's. Anyways, so I grew up in a family that was aware of some of this stuff. Certainly not everything, but they were aware of enough to try to not fill us up with a whole bunch of sugar and processed foods, which is huge. And by the time I was in high school, I was pretty set on, I think I'm going to study nutrition. This sounds interesting. And everybody said, oh, you're going to change your major in college. I didn't, and I stuck with it. And I pre-college, I had worked with not necessarily dietitians, but had like interned with some like more holistic nutritionist type practitioners. Mm-hmm. And I had read, the work of Weston Price and Sally Fallon. So I had been introduced to these ancestral nutrition concepts. So when I was going through my training, I, wasn't going through it with rose-colored glasses. I was pretty, critical of it, because a lot of what they taught was different from what I had been reading in other places. And so I used that as an opportunity to follow up in the medical journals. I mean, as a student, you have access to all the research journals. And so I would research everything. I was like, oh, interesting. They're talking all about whole grains, but they're not even talking about phytic acid. Oh, here it's mentioned in this one tiny little place in my textbook. Let me look into this, because they're saying fermentation is good. And you look it up, and I did presentations on phytic acid and whole grains, as part of my classwork. Hey, you could choose a topic. I would always choose those kind of weird topics that weren't, explored very much. And so I kind of used it as an opportunity, like, yes, I understand I'm being indoctrinated with food, food pyramid. Now it's my plate, whatever, kind of government guidelines. And there's also this other approach. And, you got to like understand how you fit into the box in order to break out of the box or to change the shape of the box, or however you want to look at that analogy. So I was kind of in it from the beginning. It was just a matter of like finding a way career-wise for me to actually work that in, because there's it's kind of difficult as a dietitian working in a conventional setting to elicit much change. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to do it very small, very incrementally. And so, I had a lot of great experiences, public policy with the state of California's diabetes and pregnancy program. I was able to make, micro changes there. Wasn't able to revamp the whole thing. Clinical practice, I was given, much more leeway when I worked with an OBGYN perinatologist and gestational diabetes. She was like, you can redo all the handouts, redo all the things. We just want to have healthiest mamas, healthiest babies, reduce our reliance on insulin and medication. So, I was able to, in that setting, do anything I wanted essentially. And then in my own private practice, of course, you have free reign. So,
Yeah.
when you don't have like a boss lording over you, I'm really intent on practicing evidence-based nutrition. That's why, Real Food for Pregnancy has over 900 citations. What I do is evidence-based. It just happens to be different from the conventional norm. So, it's kind of interesting because I have like my foot in one door and my foot out the other. And it's just a bit of a balancing act, but I do the best I can.
Yeah. Well, I think that's awesome because I think it's not just one way, right? And being able to see like both sides of things and to be able to bring those together for people, I think is really powerful, and you didn't take things at face value. You're like, oh, well, you found this little like niche over here. It's like, well, what does that really mean? It's not like, oh, this does this, and this, bananas have potassium or this, or the fermentation, like you were speaking of, it's just like, well, but, how does that affect us? And, why does it affect us? And I think you're brave, actually. I think you're a real change maker because nobody wants to do, any kind of experimentation or, around pregnancy. There's a lot of fear around that because it's a baby, it's a life. And not that you're experimenting with crazy things, you're just looking deeper and questioning things. Which
that question, that weighs heavily on me, especially when I, challenged the norms for gestational diabetes, and everyone said, you can't go lower carb, you can't go less than 175 grams. So, I did the digging into where did that number come from? What are the actual consequences of going lower in carbs? What is the effect on micronutrient intake? What is the science? What is the physiology of ketosis in pregnancy? Like really, what are we working with here? And there was a lot of questions that people just hadn't asked or had not chosen to investigate deeper. So yes, I hear that a lot. I was actually just doing an interview yesterday where someone was saying like, gosh, you ask all of these holistic practitioners and naturopathic doctors and, even conventional clinicians, some of these questions about pregnancy. And it's like, nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Ultimately for me, now that I understand, like I've gone so far down the rabbit hole, especially on like micronutrient requirements in pregnancy and how many of the, what's actually optimal often differs from what the RDAs are set at. And, but even if you're going by RDAs, like how are we going to meet the RDAs even by food? What you're going to have to eat to do that is far, far different from what the guidelines are, because the guidelines are made from this top down macronutrients first. These are the ratios you need. And then, we're low in this micronutrient. Here, take an iron supplement. Here, take a B12 supplement. Here, take an omega-3 supplement, and I'm like, how can we do it through food mostly and use supplementation only when necessary as an adjunct instead of focusing on fortified foods and half your grains whole and all these silly concepts that are really in place because the food industry, owns the dietetics industry.
So who's funding this research?
Right. Yeah.
You should drink more dairy. It's funded by the Dairy Association. It's like, but and nothing against dairy. I just kind of
right. No, it's a valid thing to point out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of leads me into one of my questions I was going to ask you a little bit later, but it just leads right into it is I think that's a tricky thing with prenatal vitamins, right? And I know ideally you're not like a huge fan necessarily, like ideally get it through food. But like you said, most of the prenatal vitamins don't even have enough of what you even think we should have as pregnant women. But I think the tricky part is, like you said, well, would we have to eat 10 cups of broccoli a day, or like, so it's that balance of, you want to eat real food and get your vitamins and nutrients through real food, and then kind of have that supplementation. So yeah, I mean, what do you think is the best way to kind of go about doing that?
Yeah, and so to clarify on prenatal vitamins, I'm actually supportive of people for the most part. I think it's a good idea to take a prenatal vitamin. It serves as an insurance policy in some ways. I'm critical of them in that there is not really a standard set for prenatal vitamins. Anybody can formulate a multivitamin and call it a prenatal.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of inaccuracies on the labeling of them, like percent daily values are are you using the pregnancy RDAs? Are you using the non-pregnancy RDAs? Are you using the RDAs for an adult man? Like what is going on? Because there's weird stuff that goes on in the labels. They are not guaranteed necessarily to contain all of the nutrients all the micronutrients that you would need. I'm not going to name names, but there's this one brand on the market that says that they can't remember how many nutrients, 9 or 12. It's like, we give you this many number of nutrients that are most commonly lacking. And it's, bullshit.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know the one I'm talking about. So it's yeah, you use good forms of those random nutrients that you've selected out of thin air that these are the ones people are low in, which is BS, first of all. But second of all, no, that's not enough. Why did you leave out iodine? Why did you leave out this nutrient? Why did you leave out that nutrient? Why did you choose to put in boron of all things? Boron.
I know. I was surprised about that as well when I saw boron, because I know what you're talking about.
it's just completely random how these companies choose what they put in their prenatals, and it's all marketing essentially.
Yeah.
So I'm critical in that I believe they should be using active forms of B vitamins. They should be using L-methylfolate instead of folic acid,
Mm-hmm.
especially because so many people have genetic differences in their MTHFR gene.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I believe they should be using actual evidence-based doses of vitamin D, which they don't, because the RDA is set way too low for vitamin D to prevent deficiency. I believe, there's a lot of things with them that I think people need to be asking solid questions on. And so there is a detailed section in chapter 6 of Real Food for Pregnancy. That chapter is all on supplements. And I'm raising a lot of those concerns in the section on prenatal vitamins so that people can be informed when they're choosing which one to take. And I do have a link in there to download on my recommendations on prenatals. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
so
it's a tricky conversation because it's not an easy black or white answer.
Yeah, for sure. And I highly recommend that. I had downloaded that a long time ago, but yeah, just to have an idea of, a good idea of what kind of vitamins you recommend. And, I know your top one is probably totally the gummy vitamins, right?
Insurance policy when you're totally nauseous and that's the only thing you'll keep down. Yeah, that's about the only time I recommend those.
I know. And bless, those women's hearts said, that's tough. That's a tough thing.
It is. It's a tough phase. I completely relate. I had the whole nausea thing going on too early on. So that phase, it's do the best you can. When people are in that phase, I'm just read the section on nausea, food aversions, and cravings, and just only read that part of the book until the phase passes and then get back to it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I actually had some women write in and ask some questions. So I'll be asking you some of those questions later on, but that is one of them, is the nausea and just kind of how to deal with that stuff. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you, since we're kind of on that track anyway, what are say, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 things that you really, I think are just kind of frustrated by when it comes to prenatal or even postnatal nutrition, that you just really kind of want to set the record straight, maybe, of just some really core things that you think women really need to know that are really differ from the current guidelines?
Yeah, so there's many that I could choose from.
I know.
I'll start with protein. So our current guidelines are, fairly moderate, I guess I would say, in protein. And as with many nutrients, there is a lack of research on how much of certain nutrients we need during pregnancy, meaning there's not a lot of studies specifically on pregnant women themselves. 2015 marked the first ever study on protein requirements in pregnant women. And they actually found that the amount of protein needed was significantly higher than the current estimated average intake. So it actually, I think late pregnancy requires 73% higher than what the current recommendations are. And early pregnancy, it was, I believe it was 39% higher. So we need protein. What that translates to in like the first half of pregnancy for a woman who weighs maybe about 150 pounds pre-pregnancy, because protein needs are reflective of your body size. That's about 80 grams or so to aim for as a minimum ballpark in the early part of pregnancy, and in the later part of pregnancy, at least 100 grams, probably more. So that's significant, because that really, once you change one macronutrient, it changes the ratio of the rest of them. And because protein and fat come hand in hand in nature, that probably means you're going to be eating a little more fat, and as a result, eating a little bit less carbohydrates. And lo and behold, that's the type of diet that tends to work much better in clinical practice. So I guess my first, point would be that there is data out there questioning many things about the current guidelines, all the way down to the macronutrient level. Then you can pick and choose, other nutrients to focus on. Choline is one that I talk about quite a lot. It's a B vitamin-like compound that works in tandem with folate and a number of other nutrients that are involved in a process called methylation. That's a process that's important all the way down to transcription of your baby's DNA. And choline is something that a lot of people don't get enough of. Especially women, especially in pregnancy and also breastfeeding, because that's when your needs for choline are at their highest. And it's a really vital nutrient for especially the brain development of baby in utero and out of utero. So choline is something that really, if you're not consuming eggs with the yolks on a regular basis, you're probably not going to be eating enough. And even if you do eat eggs on a regular basis, you might want to, take note of how much you're eating in a day and see if you want to boost that, either through other choline-rich foods or, ensuring that your prenatal vitamin or a separate supplement has some choline, because it really is vital. We have now pretty strong data, randomized controlled trials showing that more than double the current recommended intake is actually related to optimal fetal outcomes, optimal brain development outcomes at all time points that they test the babies through infancy and toddlerhood. Randomized controlled trials are the strongest studies you can have. And that was in there's multiple studies, but the one I'm referring to, they were comparing two groups. They can't ethically deprive you of choline in pregnancy. So they provided actually a little more than the RDA in the control group, and then more than double the RDA in the intervention group. So I think that one is really an interesting nutrient to point out, because if you look at all the food sources of choline, it's going to really it flips all of our dietary guidelines on their head, because the major sources of choline are animal sourced foods. And it's very, very difficult to get enough choline if your diet doesn't include eggs, but it's especially difficult if your diet doesn't include any animal foods whatsoever. And then I would say a third thing would be, I'll choose like the food safety debate. A lot of people come into pregnancy and they're asking, what do I need to avoid? What can't I eat? Instead of focusing on what I should eat more of. And about 99% of the time, these concerns are about food safety, concerns about getting, food poisoning, essentially. And what I like to point out, now I agree, we all need to be paying attention to food safety at all time points. And yes, you are more susceptible to food safety concerns in pregnancy. However, I like to look at the relative risk of actually getting sick from a particular food that's on that do not eat list, and compare it to other foods, which happen not to be on the do not eat list. So, a great example is eggs. There's always warnings about not consuming eggs with runny yolks because it might contain salmonella, and that could be very serious and whatever. So the chances that an egg contains salmonella is 1 in 12,000 to 1 in 30,000. It's very rare.
Wow.
Of all food poisoning cases in the US, only 2% are related to eggs. Now, on the flip side, if you look at what causes the most food poisoning cases and the most outbreaks in the US, it's raw fruits and vegetables. 46% of food poisoning cases in the US are from raw fruits and vegetables, mostly raw fruit, especially the pre-cut kind. So you think like pre-cut watermelon, pre-cut cantaloupe, or leafy green, or I should say, and leafy green vegetables. So how often, no doctor, at least in the US, I know in other countries it's different. In other countries, sometimes they give you warnings about raw fruits and vegetables. In the US, it's like they want you to form your diet around fruits and vegetables, yet nobody is talking about food safety related to those foods. So, both eggs and fruits and vegetables are a good thing. And both of them, we should be, paying attention to the food safety concern. But I think we way overblow the egg concern and then way, underrepresent the concern related to fruits and vegetables. So, it's all relative. And I think we need, just overall a lot less fear around food in pregnancy.
Yeah. I think even going back to what we were saying earlier about, again, the evidence-based research and your intuition and traditional wisdom type stuff, because we want to know the science. We want to know that we can feel safe. But at the same time, we really get so into that we start to lose just our own common sense and our intuition and trusting that we know what is best for ourselves. And I know that's kind of a tricky thing because it is such a new time for moms. It's like, I don't know. I've never done this before. So it really tests your trust and your intuition. But I encourage women to at least try to,
in pregnancy, your senses are so heightened. Your nose knows, right? Like if something is off, you're not going to want to eat it. Like deli meat is a perfect example. That's one where, the risk of food poisoning, yes, is there, but it's also very, very slim. And so I personally do choose to consume some cured meats in pregnancy. And I really think it's fine. But what I noticed was interesting. And by the way, that's my personal decision, right? Informed consent. I know there's a risk. I'm going to do it anyways. Other people might make a different decision. That's fine. But I noticed that if I had opened a package of salami, for example, I'd be like fine to eat it on day 1 and 2. And then after that, it was like, husband, please eat this. Like I can't just get it out of here. Right. Like just so attuned to any sort of like potential food safety concern or like another example is if I'm like this all the time, but especially in pregnancy, if like in a salad, there's like a, yucky piece of lettuce that's all like gooey and I can't eat the salad. I have to pick through every single piece of salad so that I'm really not that fastidious about most things, but something about like a rotting piece of spinach is just the most repulsive thing to me ever. And I would just, in pregnancy especially, it'd be like, can't do it.
Yeah, a lot of times I would just do the smoothies, and so I would actually do like frozen spinach or frozen blueberries and stuff like that. And so I'm not totally sure if freezing it kills anything, but at least I know it was fresh and then it was frozen. And then it just makes the smoothie more yummy when it's kind of colder anyway. So
right, exactly.
I would kind of fly up on that too. So yes, if my fresh stuff wasn't very good, I would go to the frozen but yeah, it's funny. Well, and I really like what you're saying about just kind of trust your senses and like your nose knows. And I think that leads me into a little bit of what is a little bit something I've been interested in is the epigenetics and just how I think something I really try and promote to my mamas is, hey, use this time right now, because you're probably no other time in your life are you going to be more motivated to want to eat healthy and, change habits, add on the new ones, get rid of the old ones right now than pregnancy. Because you have a huge motivation of a life within you. And so really utilizing that motivation and trusting yourself to know, and, using whatever support and resources you can, but just that it's such a perfect time to make those changes. But I think also what happens is, like you were saying, the fear, what can I eat? What can't I eat? The do's, the don'ts. And, I think it can be really, really tricky. And so I guess it's kind of a two-part question. I'm wanting to know kind of what you did to make sure that you got your extra nutrients in pregnancy. And then also just how that really does inform like your baby. And because there's, I think, a research study about how babies' taste buds can actually taste in utero and amniotic fluid. So when you are eating different things, or not even different, but you are eating your vegetables and healthier foods, that it really does kind of set up their taste buds for later on in life. So I don't know if you have any.
There's absolutely research on that. There's research on even, the composition and flavor of breast milk changes based on what a mother's eating. So this continues.
Yeah.
Into breastfeeding, into introducing solids. I have a big article on my site on starting solids with real food, and how there's this like flavor window that they've identified in the literature fairly early within the first year of life, where you can shape taste preferences later. So all of these experiences play a role. There's also on the epigenetics front, and that is a field of study that refers to how your genes can be expressed differently to either promote health or promote disease based on exposures. And in pregnancy, it's taken a step further. You can call it fetal programming or intrauterine programming or developmental origins of disease hypothesis, or there's all sorts of different names for it. But essentially, it's that the food, the nutrient levels, the stress levels, the circadian rhythm, all of these things, that movement, all the things that a mother is doing during pregnancy can help express, genes of health or potential genes that might up the risk of disease later in life. So there's many, many, many examples of this. You can go down to, the individual micronutrients. You can go to, maternal blood sugar levels, which of course I know a ton about with gestational diabetes. You can really make a huge dent in the rates of childhood obesity and diabetes by maintaining normal blood sugar levels for the most part, for the majority of your pregnancy. Whereas if your baby in utero is exposed to high blood sugar levels, they face a significantly higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes or obesity in childhood. It's like 6 to 19-fold higher by the time they're 13, depending on the threshold of blood sugar they're exposed to and some other, metabolic factors in moms. So it's, it's really within your favor to just stack the deck, as I say. Like, there's no guarantees in pregnancy. And I think that's why there's so much, stress and uncertainty during that phase. You just don't know if everything is going to go right or not go right. And, losses happen, birth defects happen, some things happen that are, really entirely outside of our control. Sure. However, we do have data that points to areas that are within our control. And maybe that won't be the only factor that, gives you a positive outcome. But at the very least, if something, adverse does happen, in your heart that you did everything within your control to have the best outcome. Even when you're in like a tricky phase of pregnancy, like nausea, vomiting phase, right? And you're like, I can't eat the best foods. I'm doing a terrible job. You can know in your heart, okay, I've done everything I can. Today, hour by hour, I have tried to eat well pre-pregnancy so that my nutrient stores are good. You kind of have to just lean into trusting that your body can handle it, right? I mean, there's something also just about your mindset as you go through pregnancy that I think is, it's really preparing you for motherhood and birth.
Oh my gosh.
Ultimate and surrender, right? So you have to learn to yes, I know this information and I want to have this control, but also I need to let go of control. And right, isn't that like the ultimate most difficult thing ever?
Oh my gosh. But isn't there that song, hold on loosely, but don't let go? Or
right.
old, rock song. Yeah, for sure. And I think just to ease, mama's anxiety and that overwhelm, are there just maybe some simple steps for maybe women who really haven't really given much thought to nutrition? They just kind of eat what they eat, whatever. But now they're like, oh my gosh, I really need to think about this. Are there any, easy ways to kind of start on that path to eating more healthy? Would you suggest any simple tips?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I really like to look at things from a micronutrient perspective and how you can build in more of these, health supporting vitamins and minerals into your diet, rather than looking at it from like a don't eat this or replace this standpoint. I mean, that's one way to approach it. But if you're looking at it from, okay, I know my baby needs more choline, and I'm going to find that choline in eggs and in liver and in, mostly animal foods, but you're also going to get it in beans and nuts and seeds and cruciferous vegetables. It's like, how can I incorporate more of those things into my diet? That's one way of looking at it. I think that's really helpful. A simple one, honestly, is trying to eat enough protein. So a lot of people, women especially, do not eat enough protein. Really, they just do not eat enough protein. And a lot of this is, what we've been conditioned to view as healthy or unhealthy over the years, which generally is low fat. And oftentimes when you go low fat, you're usually going low protein as well. Unless you're talking I guess low fat dairy could be high protein. But for the most part, you start getting really restrictive on fat and you start just choosing foods that are carbs, right? Now, the nice thing about protein is that it fills you up. It keeps you satisfied. It helps regulate your blood sugar. And also foods that naturally are high in protein are naturally really high in a lot of the micronutrients that people are missing out on in pregnancy, before pregnancy, after pregnancy. So say you start looking at things from okay, I need to have protein at each meal or even at each snack, I would recommend too. Right. Okay. My typical breakfast might be oatmeal, banana, and honey. And then, oh, wait, there's not a whole lot of protein in here. How could I remake this to add a little protein? I mean, you could stick with that. I mean, it's pretty high carb if you feel okay. I mean, everyone's different, right? So if you feel okay, sure, you could stick with oatmeal and just add, almond butter, add some collagen protein, add, mix an egg actually into your oatmeal. It kind of scrambles as you cook it. You can do things like that to up the protein of it, see how you feel, adjust. Maybe you want to choose something different that is a higher protein, lower carb sort of a breakfast. Maybe you want to experiment with having, an egg and vegetable scramble in the morning, or a frittata, or something like that. Maybe you want to experiment with doing some leftover dinner. That's just, your whatever protein you had at dinner and your vegetables and maybe there's some more carbs in there. Maybe there's some sweet potato or something else, but just try to start experimenting with different combinations of food and see how you feel afterwards. I say this in a very open way because I think when people discover this for themselves, it's actually a much bigger impact than me saying, eat this. But the general underlying reason why some of these experiments are so useful is that when you eat more protein, you feel better. So doesn't mean you need to eat a 16-ounce ribeye. You just need some.
Yeah, that's huge. You just want to feel better, I think, in general. I kind of started experimenting with that a while back with just my kiddos. I thought, well, why? We can do other things. I have a really good friend who's a functional medicine health coach, and she's just a wealth of information. And I love that she was feeding her kids, veggies and, salmon in the morning. Yep. You don't have to have breakfast type food for breakfast. Yeah. It's funny how we get in these ruts of thinking this is this, and we get in these.
I mean, that's the power of food industry marketing, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So
to break out of that, and that, you can do whatever you want. It's
exactly
eating healthy. Yeah, for sure. Okay. I think I want to ask a couple questions from my mamas before we run out of time. So yeah, let's hit upon that one, the nausea and the vomiting. She says she had the nausea and vomiting through her whole pregnancy, and not just in the mornings. So prenatal vitamins seem to come highly recommended, but she struggled finding one that wouldn't make her more sick. So any thoughts or suggestions or alternatives?
Yeah. So in terms of managing the nausea or prenatal vitamins?
Well, let's maybe do both. Yeah. Okay. I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit. But maybe just managing the nausea would be good. Maybe if there's certain foods. I mean, I know like ginger and certain things like that help. But
there's ginger, there's vitamin B6. Some people find magnesium helpful. If you can't get it down the hatch, you could do, an Epsom salt bath, or they have like magnesium oil sprays, which actually isn't oil, but it feels oily on your skin. It's like a magnesium chloride water solution that you absorb through your skin. Sometimes those things are helpful. There's the, whole idea of doing just smaller, more frequent meals. To go back to the protein thing, which is, it's tricky when you're nauseous, but a lot of times when there's like a blood sugar roller coaster going on, the nausea will be more severe. So even if you can only get in like 2 bites of egg, or like a spoonful of peanut butter or almond butter, or, a little bit of cheese, whatever it is that you can get down, it really helps with preventing a blood sugar low that usually will trigger increased nausea. So it's tricky because your body sometimes wants more carbs when you're in the nausea phase. And really, when you're like barely able to eat, I mean, by all means, eat whatever you can keep down. But once your stomach is a little more settled, try to follow it up with a little protein so that you don't end up in a blood sugar low and then another cycle of that nausea queasiness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easier said than done. Some people find that sour and salty foods work well. So that's an interesting one to try. I know for myself.
I've heard that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, people are always talking about pickles and olives. Pregnant women crave pickles and olives. They actually can be really helpful for the nausea. So it could be, you have low electrolytes or low sodium, and particularly if you're vomiting a lot, you would want to be replenishing those. So that is an option. I know there was, weeks at a time where I'd sleep with a jar of Kalamata olives next to my bed. Sounds crazy.
You don't hear that every day.
They're preserved in salty vinegar water, so I wasn't too concerned about a food safety thing. But it's like if I got nauseous in the middle of the night, I'd like have a couple olives and then I'd be fine. Isn't that weird?
No, awesome.
And then I got to the phase where that made me nauseous and I couldn't do that anymore, right? So it's like you kind of have to go with the flow. Really bad days, it was, a couple salt and vinegar chips would settle it. And I was like, God, salt and vinegar chips, this is so terrible, right? But you have the salty, the sour, you have the high potassium of the potatoes. So it's like you got this electrolyte mix going on in there, and the flavor thing, hey, it's better that than barfing.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of just be open to whatever is going to work for the time being. But I do really try to, as the nausea isn't so bad that you're going to like throw up every single thing that you eat, look to trying to get a little extra protein in there. That can be helpful. There are some people also who notice that having like things that help support their liver health, and this might point to why lemon can be helpful. Some people do like lemon water, things that help with your liver function. So sour, bitter sort of things, choline. Some people find that really helps their nausea as well. So, I don't know. It's honestly, all this stuff is a bit, you just have to pick and choose and try different things based on what your body can tolerate day to day, hour to hour, and see how you feel. As as far as the prenatal vitamin question, this might be a time where something like a gummy vitamin is a better than nothing insurance policy that you could try.
Mm-hmm.
There are also prenatals on the market that come in powder form or in a chewable form. So I know Seeking Health has a chewable prenatal vitamin that is actually not too bad. They also have a powdered one that comes in a base of like a rice protein powder that provides a full dose compared to their, other prenatal on the market.
Yeah.
You can also empty the capsules of your prenatal, if you're doing a capsule-based prenatal, into a smoothie and do it that way. Even if your prenatal is like, 3 capsules a day or something like that, even one capsule in your smoothie, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's not about perfection here. It's just about trying to get that nutrition in.
Yeah.
So,
that's kind of what happened even with me. I was actually living with my second child. I was living in Costa Rica, and it was really hard to get good prenatal vitamins. And let alone even get things like, I couldn't necessarily get that there very well, or even get it shipped, because we were in such a small town that hit or miss if we got mail or anything like that. So I started making smoothies, and that's how I started to try and get my prenatal vitamins. And that's where kind of the idea came for Luvbelly, was to put the prenatal vitamin into the powdered form, because so many women just hate swallowing those big horse pills, especially if they're nauseous.
Mm-hmm. The gag reflex can be really strong, especially early in pregnancy.
Well, and then also, if there's nothing in your body to help absorb those vitamins, because they say you really need to have kind of food and, to at least have those vitamins really truly absorb, right?
Yes. Taking it on an empty stomach
makes it worse.
No good. Yeah. It's going to come right back up, and it's not going to be pretty.
No. Okay. Well, cool. Thank you. Those are some great tips. I appreciate that. All right. So Ginger is wondering, when she was pregnant, she lost a lot of weight, and in the morning sickness never stopped. I tried everything from crackers, getting to acupuncture, ended up having Candida issue. She found a few years later. Is this something that could have contributed to her morning sickness to be so severe? I think would the Candida have any? Sugar. I don't know. I
am not sure. That's a good question. With Candida, you would definitely have some dysbiosis going on. So, an unsettled gut certainly can make you feel more nauseous just as a whole. I can't say I've seen any, Candida is something that is not super well studied in the white paper medical research. So I can't say I've seen any studies relating that to pregnancy, nausea, or morning sickness, but I could see how there might be a connection with that.
Yeah.
Certainly with Candida, it's like thriving off of sugar and carbohydrates, right? And so, I could see how there might be a connection there. That's a very good question. I wish I had a better answer.
And I don't know if if you know a lot about Candida, maybe for those who don't know what Candida is, could you give a quick overview of what Candida is?
Yeah. So Candida is a type of yeast, Candida albicans, that is actually naturally present in all of our bodies. When somebody says they have Candida, they're saying that they have an overgrowth of Candida. So there's, a dysbiosis, a disruption of the normal flora in your gut, and you have really high levels of this yeast growing in your system. So it can wreak all sorts of digestive havoc. And of course, because our digestive system is related to the rest of our body, right? Well, all the systems are connected. It can really affect many systems of the body, especially, your brain health. So brain fog, it can affect your energy levels, because technically you have this yeast that's consuming a lot of the nutrition that's going down the hatch instead of your body's cells. So you're not getting as much energy. It can have all sorts of downstream effects.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Because I think there was a craze there for a while, like, I have Candida. Everyone has Candida. And well, of course, we all have Candida,
right.
but the level of which we have that. So And I think, a lot of people do. They eat lots of carbs and sugars, and when people are stressed out and
yep, stress plays a component too, for sure.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Renelle, oh, here we go. She says, I really struggle with sweet cravings. One of her biggest struggles is how to eat healthy when all she wants is cheesecake. So again, sugar, I don't know if there's any, tips you have for curbing sugar cravings or things that you can do in that respect.
So it kind of goes back to what we were talking about what you can do to start eating healthy, I think was your question. And I talked about protein. Mm-hmm. So sugar cravings are often a cyclical thing. You kind of get stuck in a cycle of you have sugar and then you crave more sugar and then you have sugar and you crave more sugar. And it just sort of like grows and grows and grows into this untamable beast. And a lot of that is actually physiologically driven. So there is the glycemic response to sugar where you consume sugar and it raises your blood sugar quite high. Your body releases insulin to try to blunt that spike in your blood sugar because it's not healthy for your system. Mm-hmm. And then it usually over releases insulin and you get a blood sugar low. And then the cravings start all over again, because when your blood sugar is dropped down really quickly, your body sees that as an emergency. It sees you running out of energy and it wants you to consume things that will bring your blood sugar back up. And thus you will crave more sugar and more carbs. And then the cycle continues on and on and on. The best way to blunt this cycle is to consume more foods that have fat and protein in them. And those will blunt the spike in your blood sugar so you don't get quite as high of an insulin response and don't have quite such a dramatic drop in your blood sugar. Over time, you can take that to slowly start reducing your sugar intake or even your refined carbohydrate intake so that you really get to the bottom of the cycle. But for me, how I would describe it to clients is you don't want to have naked carbs. And what that means is don't eat carbohydrates all by themselves. You want to eat them alongside something that has fat and protein in it as well. And so I'm going to use an example that isn't junk food, okay? An apple. So say you wake up in the morning, you have an apple or you have a banana, some type of fruit. And you're like, I am doing so well. I'm eating healthy. Da, da, da. And then you feel hangry very soon after. Well, first of all, that wasn't enough food. That wasn't enough calories for breakfast. But second of all, that fruit is just basically pure carbohydrates. Yeah, there's fiber in there and there's vitamins and minerals and whatnot, but it is not sustenance, You need to combine it with some fat and protein. So have some almond butter or peanut butter or a handful of cashews or have some walnuts. I'm using nuts because they're usually delicious with fruit. You could have a piece of cheese with it. You could have an apple or banana alongside your eggs or breakfast sausage or whatever you're doing for your protein in the morning. If you're making a smoothie, you could have your, Greek yogurt in there or protein powder, cottage cheese, whatnot, so that you're combining the protein and the fat with the carbohydrates. Yeah. And that will stop the carb cravings before they begin. And that's really what it's about. You have to make a choice to intervene at some point and stop them before they happen. Yeah. When you're really wanting something sugary though, I also want you to think about no naked carbs. So think about higher fat, higher protein options so that you're not going to get a huge blood sugar spike.
So cheesecake would be good then, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say. It's ironic that you chose cheesecake as an example, because that's actually a dessert where you're not going to have a significant blood sugar spike. And it's so high calorie that you're you actually fill up on it, Yeah. Versus something like angel food cake, which is all sugar and very low fat. It is not very sustaining. So, if you're having something sugary, have it with something else that provides you sustenance. Again, nuts just tend to be something that goes well with dessert type things, but it could be any other source of protein as well. I would also be thinking just over the long term, sort of transitioning to less sweet desserts, so that are still delicious. So like berries with unsweetened or very lightly sweetened whipped cream. Delicious.
Yeah.
Really, really good, even though it's very low sugar and doesn't spike your blood sugar and doesn't cause the crazy blood sugar roller coaster.
Yeah.
Dark chocolate, maybe dark chocolate that has some almonds in it or something like that. That is much more blood sugar stabilizing. I mean, chocolate already is high fat, right? Mm-hmm. Then something like a milk chocolate or a piece of chocolate cake that has a bunch of sugar and flour and stuff in it as well. So if you think in that direction, I think you'll be able to slowly wean yourself off of sugar, but also be gentle with yourself. It's a long process to wean yourself off of expecting sweet flavors, but it's hard to believe when you're like in the throes of sugar, like really sugar addiction is, I mean, it's in the literature, it's sugar addiction.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It causes a dopamine spike.
Yeah. I've read studies that say it's, more addictive than cocaine,
Yep. They give rats cocaine water or sugar water, and they will go back, I think it was 95+% of the time, to the sugar water. It gives them a better dopamine surge. So when you're in the throes of it, it's hard to imagine that like someday 85% dark chocolate will actually taste sweet and be a treat to you, but your taste buds do adapt over time. You just have to like make the choice and be as consistent as you can with this no naked carbs thing for a while, as you slowly wean off the sugar, and you'll get there.
I've noticed that for sure. Like if I do fruit in the morning, I'm immediately hungry. I need something else. And there was a book, and it was the whole philosophy of, to only eat fruit in the morning because you're still kind of detoxing. And then that's what breakfast to break the fast is. Yep. I mean, and so, but I struggle with that. And I go, it's not even one of my questions, but I'm fascinated.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of theories about food combining and things.
Yes, the whole
forever. And believe me, I used to, long time ago, I used to work as a nutritionist for a health food store right outside of Venice Beach, California. So talk about all the people doing all the juice fasts and stuff. Believe me, I have seen or had firsthand experience tried almost every diet on the planet and a lot of these weirdo cleanses and things. And there's a reason that for the past 10 plus years, I've come back to the same stuff that we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
There is no evidence that if you eat fruit alongside protein, that your gut is going to rot or some crazy thing, or that you can't digest this is all
enzymes. Like the fruit enzymes need to just be alone. And if you put it together, it's going to rot.
Now, what I will say is eating excessive amounts of fruit alongside a meal is going to lead to a whole lot of indigestion, just because you're eating way too much fruit. way too much fruit, right? Yeah. And some things that are very watery, like watermelon, really do dilute a lot of your digestive enzymes and your hydrochloric acid. And so having a whole bunch of watermelon alongside a high protein meal, probably not a great idea. But something like a medium-sized apple and a normal-sized banana alongside almond butter. I mean, test it out and see how you feel. That's the ultimate test, all this stuff, right? Eat a piece of fruit by itself. Note how you feel for the next 3 hours afterwards. Mm-hmm. Eat the same thing with some protein. Note how you feel for the next 3 hours afterwards. And that really informs you most of all. But I have this thing that I've, returned to with clients again and again, where if you fix breakfast, the rest of the day falls into place.
Oh, I love that.
Someone's like, I have all these cravings in the evening and I just want to eat sugar. What's going on at breakfast? Oh, I know everyone's into intermittent fasting right now, so people are going to roast me for this, but like, I don't eat breakfast. Or, I just have like a tiny bit of, toast with jam and, no butter because saturated fat's bad for you or something like that.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, they're the ones who are going back again and again and again to the pantry for more sweet things, right? You have to eat enough food during the day, and food of sustenance, things that provide you with essential amino acids and fatty acids, to prevent yourself from being so starved later that you're just going to go raid the pantry for all the carbs and sugar.
Yeah.
Like, it's that hard and it's that simple. But if you fix breakfast or whenever the first meal of your day is, if you're doing something like intermittent fasting, I don't mean to throw the practice under the bus. I think a lot of people do it sort of unintentionally and then in combination with under eating, and then it just turns into a disaster once they get home from a stressful day of work.
I can't do it. My husband, he was trying to do it for quite a while, and after a while, he's done it for quite a while, and it seemed like he was doing pretty well with it. But then at night, he would just binge, late at night, he'd be kind of bored or whatever. And he just would be like a bag of potato chips and a bowl of cereal. And he's like, so frustrating. And I could never really, I tried to kind of do it, and I definitely know it's not necessarily great to do, obviously in pregnancy.
Yes.
But, he's like, I started eating some carbs again just throughout the day and my protein. He's like, and I do so much better.
I know. Isn't it funny how sometimes you get back to something that's a little more balanced and then like, oh, wow, this is so much easier. Yeah. I do have an article on my website for people who are interested on intermittent fasting and pregnancy, because I get asked that question a lot. So I recommend people give that a read. And I also think it's worth mentioning that, men and women are different. And some practices are meant to be done on a every once in a while basis and not on a time basis, right? So if we're talking outside of pregnancy, fasting can be something done on occasion, but if you're just in a cycle of intentionally under eating day after day after day after day, that's not good. And technically intermittent fasting, when done appropriately, is meant to provide you with the day's worth of calories just in a shorter eating window. And so again, some of it is misinterpreted, but I will also say, I've experimented with that, and I'm not a person who does super well with intermittent fasting. Granted, I've been either pregnant or breastfeeding for like 5 years. So, that's not the time that I would personally choose to try one of those things. But even outside of the pregnancy breastfeeding space, I just do much better with, some solid meals. My husband, on the other hand, can do great fasting. He can skip a meal and it's like no big deal. And his physiology works well with it, but we're both metabolically healthy individuals. We just have different needs, and that's okay. Right. Like, that's so hard for people to wrap their mind around, that like not the same thing won't work for all people. I mean, I wish that were true. It'd be much more simple, but it's just not the case.
Yeah. And different things work at different times. Like, you might need a massage this week. Next week, you might need acupuncture. This week, and just to kind of trust that. And a lot of times what I say is, just start. Don't freak out about, oh my God, I have to eat so perfect and healthy and I can't do this and I can't do that. It's more about, just start adding in the good things. Like you were saying, the more protein and other ways you can get more vitamins and minerals through food, and just slowly add those good things in. And the so-called bad things kind of start to fall away because you're actually satiated. You're actually getting what you need. So you're not looking for all those things to kind of fill yours. Oh, I'm hungry. It's like, well, if you actually ate things that really filled you up and nourished yourself, then you wouldn't crave a lot of those things. So I think that's
exactly. Yeah. If you're having cravings for more food and more like treats and stuff within I would say even a 2-hour window of having a meal, you either didn't eat a combination of foods that was nourishing enough for your body, or you didn't eat enough food, period. But you shouldn't be hungry immediately after a meal. That's a sign that the meal was not what your body needed for energy and sustenance.
Yeah. And now I'm like feeling like, because with my kiddos now, it's like they eat a good dinner and they eat what we eat. But a lot of times I don't know if they're getting enough because they are pretty hungry directly after.
Oh, I think with kids, like all of this goes out the window. They're just hungry all the time.
But you're making me think, because before bed, we always have some kind of a snack, and usually it's fruit. Maybe because usually it's like apple, because then it's not like creating a whole nother big snack or something. What's easy, that's healthy. Something maybe we should be doing the peanut butter with the apple.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you do dairy, a string cheese or something like that, or, it begs the question. And it's like with kids, with my 4-year-old anyways, I'm always trying to offer I always refer to them as foods of sustenance, things that have fat and protein in them, because that's really what fills you up for a while. And so I'm always trying to offer those foods first. Mm-hmm. And he might not want those at the time. And like, hey, if you want to just eat a banana and only a banana, like, fine. I really am not going to make a battle over this. It's still, good, real food. Yeah. But I always like to offer those options first, knowing that this is going to keep you fuller for longer, kid. This is going to give you more energy,
Yeah.
So
just real quick before I forget, what kinds of, and I know in your book you have some great recipes, specifically though, like setting yourself up with breakfast. I mean, are there some real great breakfast recommendations you have for breakfast foods? And
yeah, sure. I'm a person who really doesn't mind the whole making eggs fresh in the morning. It's pretty easy for me. We have the cast iron skillet pretty much always out on the stove. It's pre-seasoned, so nothing sticks to it. You just add a little butter. We like our eggs, over easy, over medium. And, whether we cook something else alongside it, sometimes I'll saute veggies and then put the eggs on top. Sometimes we'll have some sort of like meat with it, breakfast meat, like, bacon or sausage or something like that. But, and then there might be some more carbs in there too, depending on how we're feeling, right? We might have some good sourdough bread, or we might have some sweet potatoes. A lot of times we'll roast something like sweet potatoes in like little cubes or fries in the evening, and then have leftovers that we just cook up with the eggs in the morning, right? So it's not like a huge big to do. For people though, and that really takes 5-10 minutes, maybe. It doesn't take us all that long. But so I think it's worth it if you can to just, get up a little in advance of your need to get other things done or leave the house for work or whatnot to make that happen. If that is still like you're just on such a time crunch, then I would say some sort of a pre-made egg bake or a frittata, crustless quiche can be really helpful. Some people do that for they do one of those at the beginning of the week and then eat that for breakfast for days in a row. I mean, it depends how big your family is and how quickly that goes, right? But that's an option. Some people do them in little egg muffins and they'll freeze them.
Yeah.
You can, of course, do leftover dinner in the morning. You could do, if you're somebody who likes smoothies, I'm not really a smoothie person, but for people who like smoothies, I know many people do like pre-prepared bags or containers of all their smoothie ingredients. They can just dump it in the blender and go and have that ready really quick. For people who do dairy, like a Greek yogurt with, I have like a grain-free granola recipe in my book that's pretty tasty. You could have that, and that's a nice high protein option. There's so many things that you could do, but I think it does, to your credit, it's helpful to sort of pre-plan what is going to be your go-to for breakfast, because if you're not used to having a breakfast of sustenance, as I'll keep calling it, then you're just going to go to the easy things like a bagel or a piece of toast or, cereal or oatmeal or something that is fine on occasion, but it's just not going to keep you full for very long.
Yeah, for sure. I know. Oh my gosh. I definitely experienced that for sure. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, I think we can do one more.
Okay, cool. Kelly Herbert, different Kelly, says, I'm always interested in the connection between nutrition and hormones. And I can really relate just because I had my kids a lot later in life. And so I think I saw that you have an interview coming up. Maybe you'd already had it with hormones and stuff like that. Because I had my first at 40. I'm now 48. And I went basically from breastfeeding to perimenopause.
Yes.
And I'm not sure exactly where she's at with her idea with hormones. She didn't get real specific, but yeah, just idea between maybe food and hormones. And
yeah, there's so many connections. So And yes, we did have, so I co-run the Women's Health Nutrition Academy with a fellow real food functional medicine dietitian. And we have had many, we run, they're like webinars. They're generally designed for practitioners, but everybody is welcome to come. So that, expect it to be a little, in depth and kind of medical jargony, but you can still glean a lot from them. And we have had some on hormone balance, like estrogen dominance. We have one actually going on today on the menopause transition and managing symptoms naturally. We've had some on Dutch hormone testing. So that could be a place to go for additional information. Yeah. But as a whole, absolutely our food, our nutrition impacts our hormone balance. So to go back to the blood sugar thing, your blood sugar is very much tied into your hormonal balance because your insulin levels and your levels of insulin resistance, and also your cortisol, adrenal hormones, and even your thyroid hormones, they're all tied in. Yeah. The whole endocrine system is related. So, you could have a micronutrient deficiency that could impact your hormone balance. Like if you're low in iodine, for example, or selenium, that can impact your thyroid hormone, which thus also impacts your sex hormones as well. There can be issues related to liver health and detoxification. So a number of chemicals out there are endocrine disrupting chemicals. A lot of them, actually. Yeah. And those things can sort of overtax your liver, and your liver is involved in your hormone balance. And so
it's just everything. Yeah.
Everything is connected. Everything is connected. So the good news is that all of the things we've been talking about ultimately play into better hormone balance, getting adequate amounts of protein, getting, plenty of vegetables, especially your leafy green vegetables and your cruciferous vegetables, influence estrogen metabolism and detoxification in your liver. So that's a really good thing. If somebody has like an estrogen dominance sort of profile, that's really important to get your liver working quite well and to work on decreasing exposure to all sorts of environmental toxins and increasing the intake of nutrients that are supportive of liver health, which would include choline, a major one, glycine, which you find in your bone broth, tough cuts of meat, slow cooker sort of dishes, poultry with the skin on. I mean, it's a nutrient vital for the creation of glutathione, your major liver detoxification enzyme. You need your selenium. You need your iodine, you need your iron. So especially think about your seafood for some of those nutrients. Think about red meat. Think about your eggs for your choline. I mean, and then of course, all of these, vegetables and other plant foods that provide you with fiber that help, again, with detoxification and elimination of these chemicals. And a lot of hormone issues actually can, fall into balance with many of these changes. Yeah. In addition, you want to think about moving your body. You want to think about your circadian rhythms. So sleep hygiene. Are you keeping your room dark at night? That influences your melatonin levels and your whole cascade of hormonal balance. Your stress, how you're handling stress. That's a big influence on your cortisol. Again, a cascade to all these other systems. So I think once we start seeing this as an interconnected system, we can start seeing that a lot of these sort of holistic lifestyle changes work in tandem to promote better hormonal balance across all of these different hormonal systems in the body.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially when the first thing that comes to my mind too is fertility. If you're really, really out of whack and your hormones are out of whack, you may not even realize it. And there's just so much you can do. Again, having food be the medicine. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, before we go, I want to show everybody this awesome book. So this is Lily's book, and I highly suggest it. Real Food for Pregnancy, The Science and Wisdom of Optimal Prenatal Nutrition. It's so cool. I mean, I love the fact that I, talked about it a little bit earlier, but Gosh, you even have like people across the world who are changing their guidelines according to this book. You have, professors using this in their coursework. So just bravo. Awesome. Thank you for all of your hard work in getting this. And it's just such a service to mothers and to women. So I just thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for the great questions.
Yeah. Do you have any things in the works that you're researching right now? Sneak peek.
Well, I mean, if we weren't in the midst of this quarantine and disrupted work schedule, I have a lot of things in my brain that I would love to get out, but it's going to have to wait until the world finds, some sense of routine here again.
Yeah.
Yes, there will be more things out. There will probably be another book someday. There will be more webinars on the Women's Health Nutrition Academy. I came out with 2 pretty detailed blog posts right before all this stuff went down. So since my baby is of, eating solids, there's one on starting solids. There's one on questioning the advice that babies can't tolerate any added salt in their diet. So there's that article for the taking, and I know I'll get back to it when I have a little more time. But for now, probably the major areas I'm going to keep updating information is on my Instagram page and on my email list. So on Instagram, I try to post research briefs as I come across interesting research and give you a little snippet. So I just did one on iodine in pregnancy. I'll have another one coming up pretty soon here. So you can follow me there, get on my email list on my website. You can download the first chapter for free over at lilynicholsrdn.com. Okay. And stay tuned. There will be more in the works.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask where everyone can find you. So that's wonderful. And Instagram, you're Lily Nichols RDN, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Same as my website.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and go love up those babies. And I just wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Likewise.
All right. Take care, Lily.